All right, let's dive into gut health today. And we're breaking down this YouTube video with Dr. Ali Abdal,
Oh, yeah?
the productivity guy,
Yeah.
talking to Sophie Medlin, who's like this expert dietitian all about gut health.
It's a really interesting combo. You've got the doctor who's kind of looking for practical advice,
Right.
and then you've got the dietitian who's bringing the science to the table.
Exactly. And they go way beyond, just the usual, like, eat more fiber for your gut kind of advice.
Yeah.
They're talking about, like, a mental clarity, immunity, even, like, stress levels.
It really is fascinating when you start thinking about the gut as more than just a digestive system.
So let's start with, like, the basics. What actually IS the gut?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just like a tube that processes food, right?
No, it's way more than that.
Yeah.
It's really a complex ecosystem.
Yeah.
Trillions of microorganisms living in there, all working together.
Wow.
Bacteria, fungi, viruses, all this stuff. We call it the gut microbiome.
The microbiome. Right. And in the video, they were talking about how the bacteria in our gut actually ferment the plant fiber that, like, our bodies can't digest on their own.
Yeah, that's right. So we can't digest it, but our gut bacteria can. And when they do that, they produce all sorts of byproducts that interact with our bodies.
It's like there are these little chefs in there, like, whipping up these ingredients. Our body needs to function properly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that leads to the question of why should we care about our gut health?
Yeah, besides just, like, not having an upset stomach sometimes.
Right. Well, it turns out gut health is linked to pretty much every system in our body.
Really?
Scientists are finding more and more connections all the time.
So it's not just physical health. It affects our mental and emotional health, too.
Absolutely. It's all interconnected.
Okay, so let's talk about the gut-brain connection, because it's got to be more than just, like, getting butterflies in your stomach before a presentation, right?
Right. It's definitely more than that. The gut and the brain are constantly communicating through what's called the gut-brain axis.
The gut-brain axis.
Yeah, it's this information superhighway between the two.
Wow.
And they break it down into like three main pathways: chemical, hormonal, and physical.
Okay.
So let's start with the chemical pathway. Did you know that the bacteria in our gut produce neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine?
Wait, what? So those things that affect, like, our mood and happiness?
Yeah, those ones. 95% of our serotonin is made in the gut.
That's wild. So if you're, like, feeling down or sluggish, it could be your gut sending signals.
Right. It really highlights how much what's going on in our gut can affect how we feel mentally and emotionally.
Then there's the hormonal pathway, and they talked about something called the HPA axis, which I gotta admit that one went a little over my head.
Yeah, it's basically how our body manages stress.
Okay.
And studies have shown that gut bacteria can actually influence this system.
So managing stress isn't just about meditation and stuff, it's about gut health too.
It all works together. And lastly, there's the physical pathway, which involves the vagus nerve.
The vagus nerve.
Okay. It's this long nerve that connects the gut and brain directly, and it affects all kinds of things like digestion, heart rate, even our immune response.
So it's like a communication superhighway, making sure everything's running smoothly.
Yeah, exactly. And that brings us to the next big thing. They talked about how the gut impacts our immune system.
Yeah, our immune system, which is, like, super important, especially these days.
Right, and here's a crazy fact. 70% of our immune cells live in the gut.
70%? That's a lot.
It kind of makes sense when you think about it. Our gut is constantly exposed to the outside world, to the food we eat.
Right.
Those immune cells are right there on the front line, interacting with all the bacteria in our gut.
So it's like our gut's this incredible defense system protecting us from all these harmful things.
Exactly. And the key to a strong immune system is a healthy and diverse gut microbiome. It's like having a well-trained army to fight off infection.
Wow.
So yeah, gut health is about way more than just digestion.
It really is fascinating.
It's about our overall well-being.
All right, well, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and talk about what we can actually do to improve our gut health.
That's good.
So we know gut health is, like, really important, but what can we actually do to, like, cultivate a thriving gut microbiome?
Well, that's where this video gets really practical.
Okay.
They move into these diet tips, and it's refreshing because they're emphasizing evidence-based advice over all those, like, trendy gut health fads you see everywhere.
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in those quick fixes, but we really need that solid information, like, backed by science.
Exactly. So let's break it down. The first tip is aim for 30 different plants per week.
30. I have to admit, when I first heard that, I was like, no way, that's too much.
It does sound like a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But they're not just talking about leafy greens. It includes fruits, veggies, legumes, grains, nuts, seeds, anything that comes from a plant.
Okay, so that makes it a little more doable.
Right.
And Sophie Medlin, the dietitian, she actually breaks it down further. She's like, aim for 4 or 5 different plant foods each day.
All right, so even something simple like, breakfast cereal with seeds and nuts and dried fruit that already gets you started.
Okay, so variety is key. And that actually leads to their next tip, embrace variety, not consistency.
This kind of goes against the typical diet advice we hear, which is like eat the same things every day for weight loss or whatever.
Yeah, like those meal plans you see everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when it comes to gut health, diversity is king.
It's like making sure there's a vibrant ecosystem inside us.
Yeah. And speaking of essential elements, tip number 3 brings us to fiber.
Ah, fiber.
Yeah.
The unsung hero of gut health.
Right. It acts as a prebiotic, which means it's food for all those good bacteria.
And I think a lot of people don't get enough.
Most people don't.
Wow.
In the video, they recommend aiming for 30 grams of fiber per day,
Okay, that also sounds like a lot. But they give some good suggestions to reach that goal.
like 5 servings of fruits and veggies each day, whole grains in at least 2 meals, and snacking on nuts and seeds.
Okay, those are good starting points.
Yeah.
And if you want to be really precise, you can always use a food tracker.
Yeah, those are helpful. Now let's talk about probiotics.
Oh, yeah, those are everywhere these days.
It's a little tricky because the science on probiotics is still evolving.
Right.
Some studies say they're beneficial, but more research is needed.
Dr. Abdal actually shared his experience with the Heights Smart probiotic.
Oh, yeah?
He said it's made a difference for him, but he was careful to point out that it's just his experience.
That's important to remember because everyone's gut is different.
So it's about doing your research and figuring out what works for you.
Exactly. And the 5th diet tip, aim for 2 portions of oily fish per week.
I like that one.
Oily fish is full of omega-3 fatty acids, good for your heart and your gut.
So we're talking like salmon, mackerel, sardines.
Those are the superstars.
Yeah.
Not tuna cod or sea bass, though.
Okay, good to know. And if you're vegetarian or vegan, there are other sources of omega-3s like flaxseed or supplements.
Right. So those are the 5 things to ADD to your diet. Now let's talk about 5 things to cut down on.
Or avoid altogether.
Yeah, but it's worth noting that completely eliminating these might not be realistic.
Right, it's more about being mindful.
Exactly. So first up, red meat.
Ooh, that's a controversial one.
It is. On one hand, it can be a good source of protein,
Yeah.
but on the other hand, too much red meat has been linked to health risks, especially for the gut.
They mention a recommendation from the World Cancer Research Fund to limit red meat to 3 portions per week, max.
That's a good guideline.
Mm.
And next up, processed foods.
Yeah, we all know we should be limiting those.
It's not just the calories, it's all the additives and preservatives.
No, that's stuff that can mess with our gut bacteria.
Exactly. They give the example of emulsifiers, which are in so many processed foods.
It's a good reminder to read those labels carefully.
Okay, next one, artificial sweeteners.
This might be a tough one for some people.
I know it's hard to resist those diet sodas.
Nah.
But the video explains that artificial sweeteners can trick our bodies into thinking we're consuming sugar,
Oh, wow.
which can mess with our insulin and make us crave more sugary things.
So not really doing us any favors in the long run.
Better to stick with naturally sweet options.
All right.
All right, number 4, diet fads and detoxes.
Oh, yeah, the quick fix allure.
It's tempting to believe a juice cleanse can magically reset your gut,
Right.
but they can actually do more harm than good,
They deprive us of nutrients and stress our system.
which we know can impact the gut. And while we're debunking myths, let's not forget gluten-free.
Yeah,
Going gluten-free is only necessary for people with celiac disease or gluten sensitivity.
not just a trendy thing to do.
Right. And finally, the 5th thing, to avoid counting calories.
That one might surprise people.
I know, it seems counterintuitive. But calories don't tell the whole story about nutrition.
Yeah, 2 meals could have the same calories, but one could be way healthier for your gut.
Exactly. And food labels aren't always accurate. Plus, our bodies absorb calories differently.
Dr. Abal admitted he still counts calories for his fitness goals, but he knows it's not everything, especially for gut health.
It's more about listening to your body and making choices that nourish you.
That makes sense. We've learned so much about gut health today, haven't we?
Yeah, it's amazing how much we're still learning about this, hidden world inside of us.
And how much control we actually have to influence it.
Right. It's not just something that, happens to us.
Yeah, like you were saying earlier, it's all about making these small but important changes to our diet and lifestyle.
Exactly. You don't have to overhaul everything overnight. Just start with a few things.
I keep thinking back to that 30 different plants per week challenge.
Oh, yeah.
It sounded so daunting, but then breaking it down to 4 or 5 a day, it suddenly feels doable.
Right. It's about taking it one step at a time.
And I realized how much I rely on the same few fruits and vegetables week after week.
Yeah, it's easy to get into those routines.
So maybe just swapping an apple for a pear or trying a new leafy green.
Exactly. Little changes can make a big difference.
Yeah.
And there's cutting back on those processed foods and artificial sweeteners.
Right. I'm definitely going to be more mindful of those labels now.
It's about making those conscious choices.
So for everyone listening, what's one change you're willing to make to improve your gut health? Is it adding more fiber to your diet, trying out oily fish?
Maybe ditching that afternoon soda for a glass of water?
Yeah, even just becoming more aware of what you're eating is a great first step.
Knowledge is power.
Absolutely. And if you want to learn more, definitely check out that full YouTube video with Dr. Ebdal and Sophie Medlin. She's amazing.
This conversation has definitely inspired me to keep learning about this and experimenting with my own gut health.
Me too. I'm kind of excited to try some of those plant-based recipes we talked about.
Yeah.
Who knew gut health could be so delicious?
It's about nourishing our bodies and enjoying it.
Well, cheers to happy, healthy guts and a thriving inner ecosystem.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.